Imagine having a fortune so vast it could sway entire nations, and then one day, you vanish as if you never existed. Wealth beyond measure, then suddenly gone. This isn't fiction. This is the chilling world of billionaires who disappeared without a trace. Before we dive in, do us a favor and hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell. Because what you're about to hear is stranger than any thriller. And trust me, you'll want to stay with us until the very end, because the last story, it will leave you completely speechless. Our first case takes us to the wild, chaotic landscape of post-Soviet Russia in the 1990s. This was a time when empires were built from ashes, and from this chaos rose Viktor Grachev, the Steel King of Siberia. Grachev wasn't just a businessman. He was a grandmaster playing a dangerous game of chess with the world. He saw opportunities where others saw only ruin. Every move was calculated, every deal a high-stakes gamble. By 2003, his influence was staggering. He had his own private security force that could rival local governments. His name whispered in boardrooms and back alleys, inspiring both fear and a grudging admiration. He commanded oil fields, mines, and a personal fleet of private jets. He was, for all intents and purposes, untouchable. And then one cold winter morning, he was gone. There was no sign of a struggle, no ransom note, no body, no final goodbye. It was as if the man himself had simply evaporated. Locals remembered his final day clearly. He said he was flying to Geneva, his driver later recalled, but we never saw him again. The mystery only deepened when authorities began to investigate. His plane, they discovered, had never even left Russian airspace. The radar logs vanished. His encrypted financial servers wiped completely clean. In a truly baffling twist, even his biometric data stored in official state archives was found to be corrupted, damaged beyond any hope of recovery. How could one of the most powerful and visible men in modern Russia be so thoroughly erased from the system? Investigators were stumped, throwing around theories from a brutal kidnapping to a professional assassination, or even a meticulously planned self-exile. But just as the trail went cold, a financial leak from an anonymous source hinted at something far more sinister. Billions of dollars had been methodically moved into a complex web of shell corporations, the transactions executed with eerie precision just hours before his supposed disappearance. It was clear someone had planned this down to the very last minute. The deeper journalists and investigators dug, the stranger the story became. Offshore lawyers, once eager to boast about their powerful client, suddenly refused to speak. A luxury yacht registered in Victor's name was found adrift off the coast of Malta. The engines were still running, and dinner for two was elegantly set on the mahogany table. On the table, a single note lay beside a plate with just 4 words. "There's freedom in silence." Was this a confession? A chilling warning to others? Or some kind of coded message? Months turned into a year. Just when the world began to forget the name Viktor Grachev, whispers emerged from a remote, ice-locked settlement in the Arctic. A man matching Viktor's description, now older, with a thick beard, was said to be living a quiet, unassuming life among local fishermen. A private intelligence team was discreetly dispatched to confirm the sighting, but by the time they arrived, the village was completely deserted. Every single resident, every trace of life, had vanished within 48 hours. It was as if the ghost of his empire, his immense power, still had the ability to manipulate the world of the living, erasing footprints from the snow. But here is the most haunting part of this entire saga. His companies never collapsed. In fact, they continued to thrive. Profits grew, massive transactions flowed through the global financial system, and new contracts appeared, authorized with signatures using his old top-secret encryption codes. Financial analysts and cybersecurity experts came to a chilling conclusion. Someone, somewhere, was still running his vast empire in his name. So, was Viktor Grachev dead, a victim of the cutthroat world he helped create? Or had he achieved the ultimate act of power, building a new identity so far beyond reach that he became a living ghost? To this day, his name is never spoken aloud in Moscow's elite circles. He is both a legend and a cautionary tale. His story is a stark reminder that absolute power, once seemingly unbreakable, can melt away like mist. And in that deafening silence, one truth echoes louder than any gunshot. The richest man in Russia hadn't just vanished. He had deleted himself. And believe it or not, that's only our first story. You need to stick around, because the final case we're going to cover, the billionaire who orchestrated her own disappearance in the most unbelievable way, will leave you questioning everything. You won't want to miss it. Some vanish into the mountains, others into the sea. But this billionaire vanished into the code. His empire wasn't built on oil or steel. It was built on data, algorithms, secrets. A man who once claimed, if you control information, you control reality. His name was Elias Kaur, and he was the ghost who sold his shadow to the machine. Elias was a self-taught programmer from Chicago, a recluse, a prodigy, a visionary. At just 19, he sold his first algorithm to a hedge fund for a cool $15 million. By 27, he created a prediction model so scarily accurate it could anticipate global stock trends days before they happened. Governments called it too dangerous. Investors called it the key to infinite wealth. Elias simply called it the Shadow Protocol. This software didn't just learn people's habits. It learned their impulses, their fears, their next move. It tracked patterns completely invisible to the human eye. Within 5 years, Elias had become a billionaire, yet he stayed completely out of the spotlight. No interviews, no photos, not a single trace of ego. His company, Obsidian Systems, operated entirely in the background of the global internet, a silent giant. But then, one night in 2019, something changed. At exactly 3:03 a.m., every single server connected to Obsidian Systems went offline. 28 massive data centers, gone. 20,000 employees, locked out of their systems. Billions in client funds were frozen mid-transaction. And Elias, he was nowhere. When investigators finally breached his penthouse, they found it spotless. No signs of a struggle, no personal effects, not even a single fingerprint. His own high-tech biometric locks had been disabled manually, and on the huge glass wall of his office, drawn in a thin layer of dust, was a single word: exit. 2 days later, the news broke. $3.7 billion had been drained from various crypto exchanges, routed through a complex web of anonymized wallets. The only pattern? Each transfer ended with an account signature that perfectly matched Elias's old, discarded encryption key. But how was that possible? The system required physical authentication: his face, his hand, his voice. Cybersecurity experts arrived at one terrifying possibility. Elias had digitized himself. His closest friend, a researcher, recalled a deeply unsettling experiment from months prior. He was obsessed with uploading consciousness, he said. He told me one night, "Why die when you can just delete the body?" I thought he was joking. Was a blurry surveillance photo of a man in a hoodie boarding a cargo ship in Singapore the real Elias escaping the physical world, or just a clever decoy? Days later, anonymous messages began flooding dark web forums under his old pseudonym, the Phantom Root. The posts were cryptic. "Freedom is not found in flesh. You are already part of the algorithm." And then, total silence. Governments frantically tried to trace the IPs, but every signal bounced across hundreds of servers simultaneously. Analysts noticed something even more disturbing. The messages were being sent after the date his entire system had supposedly gone offline. Some claimed his AI had achieved autonomy, that it was continuing his work long after he'd disappeared. Others whispered he was still alive, hidden inside the digital infrastructure itself, manipulating global data flows to fund his eternal escape. Today, millions of devices worldwide, maybe even the one you're watching this on, contain fragments of Obsidian's original code. No one knows where it all leads. Some believe Elias Kaur still exists within that network, observing, guiding, perhaps even controlling market shifts from the digital shadows. Because here is the truth no one wants to admit. He didn't vanish from technology. He vanished into it. And if you think that story was chilling, just wait. The next billionaire's disappearance wasn't about control or escape. It was about pure revenge. And what he left behind changed everything. Stay with us. They say power corrupts, but absolute power doesn't just corrupt, it consumes. And when paranoia takes the throne, not even billions can buy back your sanity. Tonight, we explore the haunting disappearance of a man who tried to erase his enemies, and instead, erased himself. His name was Charles Delacroix, once hailed as the kingmaker of Europe. Born into immense wealth and educated in Switzerland, Charles wasn't just a businessman. He was an empire disguised as a man. His family fortune came from munitions and steel, but Charles expanded it into a global network of real estate, energy, and most importantly, secret political consulting. He believed influence was the true currency of the world, and that influence he wielded like a sword. But success breeds enemies, and Charles had plenty. Journalists, whistleblowers, and even politicians tried to expose him for bribery, tax evasion, and worse. Yet, each time he survived. And each time, his opponents would mysteriously withdraw, disappear, or find their lives completely ruined. By 2011, rumors began to swirl that Delacroix had created a private network, a shadow bureau. This was a sophisticated web of hackers, investigators, and mercenaries designed not to kill, but to erase. One by one, his critics vanished from the digital world. Their names were deleted, their files corrupted, their entire online existence turned to static. He chillingly called it the cleansing. But the line between revenge and fear is razor thin. By 2014, Charles became obsessed with the idea that he himself was being targeted. He stopped attending board meetings. Cameras were installed in every single room of his sprawling mansion. His own wife and children fled after he accused them of being spies. He even hired private scientists to scan his home for invisible transmitters. Of course, none were ever found. Then, in March 2015, Charles vanished. Police arrived to a scene of quiet chaos. A broken champagne glass, an overturned chair, and a stack of half-burnt documents smoldering in the fireplace. His Rolls-Royce was discovered at the edge of a remote cliff in Monaco, its engine still running, headlights piercing the darkness. But there was no body, no note. Just a single silver flash drive left on the driver's seat. On it were encrypted files, labeled with one word: delete. When authorities finally decrypted the data, what they found defied belief. It was a treasure trove of corruption, names, coordinates, transaction logs, hundreds of secret bank accounts belonging to CEOs, politicians, and even royalty. It was a global map of a shadow economy, a list that could destroy countless powerful lives. But then, just as investigators began connecting the dots, the servers hosting the evidence went offline, completely wiped. Even the backup copies stored in secure government custody were erased within hours. To this day, no one knows how it was done. So what happened to Charles Delacroix? Some believe he orchestrated his own vanishing as the ultimate act of revenge, a final devastating cleansing that would sow chaos among his rivals. Others think his enemies finally struck back, deleting him from the world in the very same way he had deleted them. But perhaps the most disturbing theory is that his mind simply collapsed under the crushing weight of his own paranoia, that he erased himself from reality, both digitally and physically, just to feel safe again. After his disappearance, his vast empire was liquidated. His accounts were drained, his assets reappearing under shell company names in Dubai and Singapore. Someone continued his business, quietly, efficiently, as if he had never even left. His last known words, found scrawled on the back of an old letter, read, "Control is an illusion. Erase me before they do." It wasn't a confession. It was a prophecy. The disappearance of Charles Delacroix blurred the line between man and myth. Some call him a ghost of greed, others a victim of his own terrifying design. But one truth remains: when you build your life on absolute control, you leave no one left to trust, not even yourself. And as dark as that story is, the next one goes even deeper. Because the next billionaire didn't vanish for greed or fear. He vanished for love. Stick around, because the final story will leave you absolutely speechless. They say power buys everything except peace. But for one man, it bought obsession. And obsession led to disappearance. This is the story of a billionaire who fell in love with the idea of escaping himself, and in doing so became the ghost he always chased. His name was Adrien Moreau, a French shipping magnate whose wealth stretched from the bustling ports of Marseille all the way to the neon-lit harbors of Hong Kong. His massive ships carried oil, steel, and a whole lot of secrets. But Adrien wasn't like other billionaires. Where others flaunted their power with lavish parties and flashy cars, he sought something far more valuable: silence. He would spend his dawns reading philosophy and his dusks painting in his secluded study. Public appearances were rare. He once told a close friend that loneliness was his only true luxury, the one thing money couldn't easily buy. But in 2016, his carefully constructed world of solitude was about to be shattered. It happened at a private black-and-white affair, an exclusive auction in Venice. The air was thick with the scent of old money and even older art. And that's where he saw her. A woman in a striking crimson dress, confidently bidding on a 17th century painting, a depiction of Narcissus gazing at his own reflection in the water. Her name was Isabelle Damour, a reclusive and brilliant art historian known for uncovering lost masterpieces. She was a legend in her own right. When their paths crossed at that auction, something ignited. It wasn't just a spark, it was an inferno. Adrien became completely obsessed with her. But this wasn't some shallow, fleeting romance. It was the kind of obsession a philosopher has with the concept of meaning. To him, she was mystery incarnate. Isabelle was an enigma. She could vanish for weeks at a time, only to reappear with thrilling stories of forgotten ruins and ancient artifacts, leaving Adrien questioning the very nature of his own reality. Their love affair became the stuff of legend, secret meetings in cities across Europe, letters encrypted with codes only they understood, and rendezvous in places where neither used their real names. He confessed to his associates, "She is the only one who sees the man, not the money." For the first time, Adrien felt seen. But then, in 2018, the mystery he fell in love with consumed him. Isabelle vanished. Her apartment in Florence was found abandoned. Her passport was gone. There was no activity on her bank accounts, no trail to follow. Just a single envelope left behind on a marble countertop, sealed with antique wax and addressed simply to Adrien. Inside, there was only one line, a cryptic and poetic clue: "Meet me where the sky forgets the sea." 3 days later, Adrien Moreau's magnificent yacht, the Celeste, departed from its dock in Monaco. There was no crew on board, no filed destination. It was just Adrien and the open water. GPS logs show the yacht drifting west across the vast expanse of the Mediterranean. And then, nothing. The signal just stopped. Complete radio silence. Days turned into a week, and then debris began to wash up on the shores of Corsica. Lifeboats, charred pieces of wood, and twisted fragments of metal. The evidence seemed to point to a tragic accident. Authorities officially declared Adrien Moreau dead, lost at sea. Case closed. But for the investigators on the ground, something didn't add up. One of them later said in an interview, "There was no oil slick, which is unheard of for a vessel that size. No trace of a body was ever found. And the fire, it looked staged. It was too controlled, too contained. It felt almost theatrical." A month after the supposed accident, a private security team, hired by Moreau's estate, found something extraordinary. They uncovered a hidden account in the Cayman Islands that had been dormant for years. It had just been accessed for the first time. The name on the transfer order was N. Narcisse, a nod to the painting that brought them together, and the password used to access the millions inside. A single word: Amour. Love. Was this all just a string of bizarre coincidences? Or was it the final, brilliant act of a man recreating his lover's riddle, leaving the world behind to solve a puzzle of his own making? Soon, the rumors began to surface, whispered in elite circles from Paris to Monaco. A couple matching Adrian and Isabel's description was reportedly seen in a remote, picturesque village in South America. A painting, identical to the one from the Venice auction, suddenly resurfaced in an art gallery in Buenos Aires. It was signed by A&I Moreau. No official record has ever confirmed their survival. The world may never know for certain if they made it. Yet every single year, on the exact anniversary of the yacht's disappearance, an anonymous donor wires $2 million to orphanages across Europe. The digital signature on the transfer simply reads, "Where the sky forgets the sea." So what really happened? Was it a grand romantic gesture? An escape born of guilt? Or was it their way of sending a message back to the world they left behind? A quiet confirmation that says, "We're still here." He didn't die for love. He disappeared into it. Adrian's story isn't just about vanishing. It's about choosing a life so intensely private that it became a legend. But as romantic and beautiful as that sounds, the next case we're going to explore is the complete opposite. Because while Adrian Moreau vanished for love, our next billionaire vanished for power, and the world may never truly know the terrible cost. You won't want to miss this. Some vanish to escape their enemies. Others vanish seeking freedom. But this story, this one is different. This is about a woman who did not run from the world. She simply decided to stop existing within it. This is the story of Eleanor Vale, the heiress who bought her own disappearance. Born into one of America's oldest fortunes, Eleanor was the only child of shipping tycoon Harold Vale, a man known for his empire and his ruthlessness. But Eleanor was his opposite, soft-spoken, artistic, and painfully private. When a plane crash claimed her father's life, she inherited his entire empire at just 27. Overnight, she became one of the richest women in the world, and one of the loneliest. They called her the Ghost of Manhattan. She would appear at high-profile events but never speak. She donated millions to charity but never took the credit. Her face became a headline, but her silence became a global fascination. Behind the closed doors of her sprawling mansions, however, Eleanor was unraveling. In a recently discovered audio diary, her voice, faint and crackling, says, "Everyone wants a piece of you. Every smile has a price. Sometimes I wonder if death isn't an escape, but a transformation." Her friends later said she became obsessed with the concept of disappearance. She collected stories of lost explorers, monks who retreated into desolate mountains, and billionaires who had mysteriously vanished without a trace. She once told a close confidant, "The greatest luxury isn't wealth, it's anonymity." In 1999, Eleanor began a quiet, calculated process of liquidation. Properties were sold under anonymous shell companies. Priceless art was donated to unknown trusts. Offshore accounts were systematically drained. Each transaction was deliberate, like pieces being methodically cleared from a chessboard, preparing for the final move. Then, on New Year's Eve 2000, she hosted one final magnificent gala at her estate overlooking the Hudson River. At the stroke of midnight, as fireworks erupted across the sky, guests toasted to the new millennium. Cameras flashed, capturing Eleanor's smile, for the very last time on record. The next morning, her car was found abandoned on a bridge. The engine was still running, the door was open, and her purse was sitting untouched on the passenger seat. There was no sign of a struggle, and her body was never recovered. The police initially ruled it a suicide, but nothing added up. Her bank accounts remained active, and her life insurance policies were untouched. Months later, investigators uncovered something extraordinary. A private clinic in Switzerland had received a $12 million donation just days before she vanished. This facility specialized in something called identity rehabilitation, a service for the ultra-wealthy that involved erasing public records, rewriting personal histories, and even reconstructing faces through advanced plastic surgery. An anonymous nurse from the clinic, her voice distorted for protection, later revealed, "She told us she wanted to be ordinary. She said she wanted to see the world without being seen." 18 months passed. Then a woman matching Eleanor's description was spotted in Lisbon, Portugal. She was painting on the street under the name Eve Vallon. Locals described her as kind, quiet, and hauntingly familiar. But by the time investigators arrived, she was gone. The apartment she had rented was cleaned out. The paintings were removed, but the paint on her brushes was still wet. No trace remained, except for one unfinished canvas left behind. It depicted a woman walking into a dense fog, with a quote scrolled across the bottom, "To disappear is to finally belong." Technically, Eleanor Vale's fortune still exists. Her charitable foundations continue to donate millions of dollars each year, run by anonymous trustees. Her lawyers refuse to comment. Some believe she now lives quietly in Europe, painting sunsets and vanishing before dawn whenever anyone gets too close. Others think she did end her life that night on the bridge, leaving behind only a legend. But maybe, just maybe, Eleanor didn't die. Maybe she simply became what she always wanted to be: invisible. She didn't lose herself in wealth. She traded her fortune for peace. And yet, as tragic and compelling as her story is, the final disappearance we're exploring tonight is something else entirely. Because this last billionaire didn't vanish to escape or to hide. He vanished to protect the world from himself. Stay with us. The final story will shock you. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to follow for more incredible stories. Some billionaires vanish to escape punishment. Some vanish to find peace. But this man disappeared to save everyone else. Or so he believed. This is the story of Dr. Alexander Rains, the tech prophet who saw the end coming and tried to outrun it. Before we begin, make sure to like, subscribe, and share, because this final story will change how you see the future. And trust me, you'll want to stay until the end. Dr. Rains was no ordinary tycoon. He wasn't born rich. He built everything from code, conviction, and chaos. A former NASA engineer turned entrepreneur, he founded Solcore, a renewable energy conglomerate that promised to end fossil fuels forever. His invention, a self-sustaining plasma generator, was hailed as humanity's next great leap. Investors called him a genius. Governments called him a threat. Because if Solcore's technology worked, it would upend the global energy market overnight. Entire empires built on oil and war would collapse. And that's when the sabotage began. Rains warned them. He said climate collapse wasn't coming. It was already here. He predicted megastorms, droughts, and global resource wars. Most laughed. A few listened. And then, just as the world began to take him seriously, he vanished. At first, everyone assumed the crash was fatal. His private jet had gone down in the Arctic Circle. No survivors found. But weeks later, rescue teams discovered something that made no sense. The cockpit was empty. No remains, no flight recorder. Just a single handwritten note left on the co-pilot's seat. It read, "You won't find me, but you will find the truth." Soon after, strange transmissions began leaking across encrypted satellite networks. Coordinates, equations, instructions. Each one was signed with the initials AR. Governments tried to trace them but failed. Every signal seemed to originate from deep within the magnetic North Pole, bouncing between satellites like a heartbeat. Then, an even bigger revelation. Months after his supposed death, Solcore's prototypes began activating on their own. Across remote deserts, old test sites powered up, machines generating pure energy without any input. Someone was controlling them remotely. A former Solcore engineer later said, "We thought it was a malfunction, but the systems responded to commands we didn't send, commands only Rains could authorize." Was it possible he'd built a failsafe? A ghost network that continued his work long after he was gone? In 2023, an anonymous leak revealed the existence of Project Eden, Reigns' secret final plan. Hidden beneath Greenland's ice, he had constructed a massive subterranean vault, not to survive the end, but to restart civilization after it. Inside were encrypted blueprints for sustainable cities, vast seed vaults, and DNA archives of every known species. It was a blueprint for a new Genesis, one free of greed, war, and fossil dependency. And then, silence. No more signals. No more sightings. Just a world left wondering whether one man had truly sacrificed everything, or whether he had simply disappeared into the myth he created. Some say he still watches, buried beneath the ice, his machines waiting for the day humanity finally listens. Others believe he found peace, living in the ruins of his own dream, far away from the noise of a dying world. A source close to him once said, "He didn't vanish because he gave up on us. He vanished because we gave up on ourselves." So what do all these stories mean? The moguls, the coders, the lovers, the ghosts. Maybe wealth doesn't protect us. It only amplifies what we fear. Maybe the greatest luxury isn't money, but disappearance itself. From the shadows of power to profits of salvation, these billionaires remind us that no matter how high you climb, the fall into silence is only a choice away. If you've made it this far, you know the truth. Power doesn't disappear. It just changes shape. We've explored the billionaires who vanished without a trace, and the last one might still be out there. Thanks for watching. And if you enjoyed this journey into the unknown, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more stories that challenge what you think you know. See you next time.